to bring us up to date on the new information that he has submitted.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara, members of the board. For your record, I'm Bob Ament, attorney for the applicant J.K. Scanlon Company. In the past week, actually about a week ago, we submitted to the board a number of documents that were intended to address issues that the board or the public had raised at previous hearings or in correspondence filed with the board. And we think that the correspondence that I filed and those exhibits should go a long ways towards helping the board feel that it can approve the installation of the turbine with appropriate conditions to protect all parties' interests. Before I review what's in that letter briefly and just tell you about the documents that we have, I just want to say that there have been a number of things that have been said at meetings, in the press, in correspondence, that are all very true. And they include the following. One, that we know a lot more about wind turbines today than we did a year ago. The board has learned a lot, especially because it studied at great length the possibility of recommending an article to town meeting for the regulation of wind turbines. The Cape Cod Commission has learned a lot because they've been working on this regulation of wind turbines, something that they had not previously done, and now they're about ready. They have voted some regulations that are going to go to the Assembly of Delegates, to which this project, this Scanlon project, would be subject unless there's a vote of the Board of Appeals, probably tonight. And finally, residents of the town have learned a lot about wind turbines, in many cases much more than they ever wanted to know. And that, of course, has significantly colored the board's deliberation, the public's perception of the proposal by the Scanlon Company that's before the board. I would say, though, that one of the things that we've learned, and it's been stated by residents, and so it's another thing that it's been stated that I've noted, is that the proposed Scanlon turbine, in its location and in its size, is probably appropriate, and we think that it is. It's also been stated by one neighbor who's been affected by larger turbines that this additional turbine will not help the situation at all. I can't disagree with that. We're not proposing this turbine to address the problems that have arisen that are related to the town turbines, to the Webb turbine, and so on. And that's not an appropriate standard. Wind turbines are permitted to be approved by the Board of Appeals in its discretion, but subject to the usual special permit criteria. And town meeting further has specified the technology park, that is the light industrial B district in town, as a location where dimensional requirements can be waived. The point clearly that town meeting thought that the industrial park, tech park, is a prospective good place for wind turbines. Now, a year ago, and previously, I think we all thought that wind turbines were generally good. Wind turbines are a good thing. Alternative energy is a good thing. It's a necessary thing. It's encouraged by the state. It's encouraged by the town. And today, there's an awful lot of negativity about wind turbines. There's a lot of negativity about what certain wind turbines have meant to some residents in Falmouth. Let's not lose sight of what we knew to be true a year ago, is that alternative energy is good. It's important. It's really important. And it's going to become more important in the years to come. Wind turbines are a part of that. Appropriately located, appropriately sized wind turbines ought to be part of our future. Would we approve the turbines the large ones that have been built in Falmouth? Would we do that today? Would the Board of Appeals do that? That's not the question. That's before the Board of Appeals. The question is whether the proposed Scanlon turbine ought to be approved by the Board of Appeals and whether it can be approved with appropriate conditions. I'll show you this photo simulation again. This is the existing Webb turbine. It rises from the ground 397 feet to the top. This little thing that you probably not see very well from where Ken Foreman is the proposed Scanlon turbine. 397 feet. The tip of this blade would be 179 feet. And it will start 75 or 65, I forget the exact figure, feet below the ground elevation that the Webb turbine is. This point, the highest point of the proposed Scanlon turbine, is 265 feet below this point. And think about the difference in the so-called rotational diameter of what's being proposed versus this. When the Board of Appeals was carefully studying what a proposed bylaw ought to say in Falmouth, it had a figure for how relating the distance of a turbine to the nearest residence related to, I think it was 10 times the rotational diameter. Here we have 13 times that. So we met the criteria that the Board of Appeals, after study, thought was a good criteria. And that closest residence, about 1,300 feet away to the proposed Scanlon site, is to the north, opposite the prevailing wind direction, and on the other side of the industrial park, tech park, from the tower location. And the homes where people have been bothered by the existing larger turbines are some 3,000 feet away from the proposed Scanlon location. The Cape Cod Commission, having thoroughly studied this issue, says it won't require a sound study except for turbine installations over 600 kilowatts. This is a 225 kilowatt machine. Some of you may know better, but that's my understanding of what the Cape Cod Commission regulation is. Having said all of that, let me tell you what we've done and what we submitted last week. The board had a lot of concern about the so-called fall zone. You know, the word fall zone is not in our zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw simply says that you need to have on the lot where a wind turbine is proposed to be located the ability to draw a circle of a certain size. The radius has to be the height of the turbine to the tip of the blade plus 10 feet. We call that the fall zone, and in most cases it has to be on the lot. But as you know, in the industrial park, in the Industrial B zoning district, the board can waive that. Town meeting has said so. But I think that the board was concerned about waiving it in a situation where you did not have an agreement in your files from a neighbor about the fact that this wind turbine is in close proximity, in fact, could theoretically fall onto adjacent property, or theoretically could throw a blade or ice, or that type of concern. Well, we have filed with you now a signed agreement, suitable, ready for recording at the Registry of Deeds, between Scanlon, J.K. Scanlon Company, the tenant of the property that's owned by a trust or LLC. I'm not sure the ownership, but it's all the same. So Mr. Scanlon, John Scanlon, has entered into an agreement with Mr. Walsh, the principal of the company that owns the adjacent properties, both the long pork chop lot, which has the shared driveway, and the lot opposite that has this building on it. I believe there was some confusion. Some people may have thought that this is the Social Security building. That's not the case. The Social Security building is across the street over here. But this is a building owned by Walsh. Walsh also owns that lot, which has a building farther up the driveway. And you have a copy of the agreement where Mr. Walsh expressly acknowledges the issues which have been raised about flicker, about noise, and so on, and expressly states his opinion that the benefits of the wind turbine and the agreement that's been reached outweigh any concerns that he has. He will be sharing in the electrical output from this machine, so in a sense we have a partnership of abutting property owners with respect to this. And I think that ought to give you the comfort in approving this project with the waiver that you're allowed to grant in the light industrial B zoning district, where the fall zone extends onto adjacent property. Now, we also submitted to the board, besides a copy of that agreement, a report prepared about the type of machine that's proposed to be installed. And it was actually prepared by the Danish company that then sold its rights to Aeronautica to manufacture this turbine in the United States. And it documented all of the turbines of this type that have been installed, and there has never been a collapse of the machine, nor has a prop ever been thrown. And I will refer you again to the accident information that we have filed previously about the fact that accidents are, in fact, rare. They have occurred among the 100,000 plus commercial turbines that are erected in the world. Yes, there have been accidents. The number of injuries or fatalities that have to do with people who aren't working on the machines themselves is truly tiny. In fact, there are no fatalities except one or two. I mentioned a parachutist, and there have been some recorded fatalities, and only 2 recorded in the recent history, in the last 30 years, injuries from ice throw in the entire world, both more than 15 years ago. So the risk is truly tiny. We submitted that report about the lack of structural collapse, lack of failure of this type of machine. We have told you previously what we would do about ice throw. There is redundancy, and we will shut the machine down. This is now part of the agreement with the abutter Walsh. The machine will be shut down either if there is icing detected, which we think will happen automatically anyway, or if it is imminently forecast. The machine will be shut down. We submitted some information to you about what would be involved in removing the turbine if it did fall on the road. We sent a letter to you with some information about that. This is something we think there is hardly any chance will ever happen, but it is a situation that can be dealt with fairly quickly. And we also gave you information about how the decommissioning expenses were calculated by the Scanlon Company, just as they would calculate it for if they were asked to bid on a job, is how they described it to me. You know the Scanlon Company. You know John Scanlon, their reputation. So the figures they're giving you, the promises that they're making, their ability to carry out the conditions, to meet the conditions that the board may grow, I think should be without question. Remember that in Falmouth, under our bylaw, we have a lot of protection that may not exist everywhere else. We require a use permit and inspections and certifications from engineers before the machine can start to operate. Our bylaw requires biannual inspections of the machine. I think we have a lot of protection built into this. I also mentioned in the correspondence that we had agreed to shut the machine down upon notice that there was a complaint about flicker from any of the two, I should say either of the two, and that's all there are, the two residences which may experience flicker. They're both on Thomas Landers Road, and the most either would experience it during the weeks when there can be flicker would be for 14 minutes. If necessary, we will shut the machine down. We will shut the machine down if there's notice, until a solution is agreed upon by the Board of Appeals. There are a variety of things that can be done. Screening the home with vegetation or screens, simply permanently programming the machine not to operate during those times, perhaps satisfying a property owner in another way. You know, there are, I think, 8,760 hours in the year. And we're talking about total flicker time of about 2 hours. In one house it was 2 hours and 50 minutes, and another was less than 2 hours, but that didn't count the fact that 30% of the time it's cloudy or in flicker isn't going to be a problem. It's 1/4,000th of the year, and something could probably be worked out financially or sharing of power or any number of ways to deal with it. But we'll shut the machine down if anybody complains about it, if either of those houses are affected by it. So I think we've addressed the flicker question. We've addressed fall zone as best as we can. And then there's noise. It's an industrial park where town meeting said put these things, or implied that, let me say. And it's an appropriately sized machine, small enough so that the Cape Cod Commission doesn't think a study is necessary if you have the requisite distance to meet their standards, which we do. And where the immediate abutter has made an agreement, where the owner of the Social Security building across the street sent you a letter in support of this project. That's one of the letters you have. Other nearby property owners in the park have sent you letters. The Park Association has sent you a letter in favor of it. The EDIC has sent you a letter in favor of this project. The standard can't be that you need to be able to be outside in the industrial park and have it be quiet. It's just not the standard. Will there be an adverse impact at any residences? Well, the closest residence to the, as I said before, to the south is almost 3,000 feet away. And the sound studies show that when the machine kicks in, I think it said it would be an increase of 0.2 decibels, not 2 decibels, which is the level at which you can maybe hear something. 0.2 decibels. It's somewhat higher at a high speed, but still below 2, if I recall. The standard can't be that a machine can't detect the sound. It has to be a reasonable standard. And we meet it. We meet it with the location of this machine and the size of the machine. So, not all wind turbines are bad. Wind energy, if it can be gained without adverse impact, is good. This machine, as people have said, even people who are opposed, have said they're opposed because they've been so affected by the larger turbines, have acknowledged that this machine is appropriately sized, appropriately located. And I would hope that the board will use its discretion appropriately and approve this wind turbine. Now, if you have questions, the consultant from Atlantic is here, and of course John Scanlon and Patrick Scanlon and Greg Inman are here.
Thank you both. Why don't we just ask if there's any new information in the file?
There's new information from attorney on that, but he just reviewed. We have some information from Mark Poole and Todd Drummey, and they're both here, so I'm sure they're going to address that. I'm not reading all of it into the record. And John M. Conley from Falmouth, who is opposed.
Okay. With that, what else have with Dennis for any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Ron?
I just had one. In all your research and reading, did you find that the rate of spin of the smaller turbine versus the larger turbine is quite different, given the same, assuming the same wind speed? How do you get a faster rate that is smaller? Did you ever see any comparisons made?
I don't have any doubt that Rich can answer that question better than I can. He has the right initials after his name.
Rich Tabazinski with Atlantic Design Engineers. And to answer your question, this particular model does have a faster spin rate than the larger turbines. Typically, the larger ones, max out around 14, 15 RPM. This one, I believe, is 28, if I recall, looking at the data, but it does spin a little bit faster. That's taken into account in our calculations.
Thank you very much.
Tricia?
Oh, I have quite a couple questions for Greg. Greg, can you just refresh us on what type of sensor is going to signal that there's ice on the blades to shut the machine down?
Greg Inman, J.K. Scanlon. There's a number of companies that make an ice detection system. Ones that I've used on other projects is built by B.F. Goodrich. It detects the vibration and the out alignment of the blades, and then it automatically relays that back to the computer system, the VPM, and shuts the machine down.
Okay, and that's done automatically?
Correct.
So that's put on the main shaft tower, then it picks up the vibration. Is there any laser used to pick up the ice throw on it that's forming?
No, it's not a laser system.
Oh, it's not?
And this is a redundant system. Typically, the blades will pick up that out alignment first. This is just a redundant system in case that does not happen.
Okay. Now, that's going to shut it down automatically, correct?
Correct.
We don't have to have a person go in and shut it down. What about turning it back on? That's going to be done by a person, obviously.
Correct. That has to be done manually.
Okay. Now, is that person going to be inside the turbine itself or in a building?
In the turbine. You have to go actually inside the tower and do a manual.
Okay. My next question is, around the turbine, you have no fencing, obviously, because it's secure and it's locked. What's going to prevent somebody from being outside the turbine when that's being turned on and for the ice that's on those blades to start falling down?
Typically, a procedure on other projects is once it's shut down, you don't turn that back on until that ice is gone. Because if you did turn it back on, it would automatically trip itself again and shut off.
Okay.
You have to wait until that ice is gone off the blades.
All right. Now, typically, seeing you're familiar with this, do you put warning signs up in that area for falling ice as it melts on the blades?
Yes, I have on other projects.
You do? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Nothing like that. Sorry. I have several. Bob, I'm going to ask you because I don't know who best would answer them. But just following up on the ice sensor, and I may have missed this, but I thought there was one that was an imbalance sensor and then there was one that was an ice sensor. Did I miss that? Are they both imbalance sensors and they're just redundant?
Yes. They are a redundant system, so the ice builds up on it and it senses the out alignment of the blade.
So they're both the out
Yes.
alignment kind of?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let's see. Bob, a question in terms of the decommissioning. I think you provided us information that the useful life of the turbine is 20 years. So would you be opposed to a condition that required the decommissioning or required the permit only for a 20-year period with potential renewal depending on what we find 20 years from now?
I don't think the client would have any objection to that. I think we would like to have the opportunity at nearing the 20-year mark to come back, but it will probably be somebody besides myself.
Yeah, and it certainly won't be me sitting here. The other thing, Bob, is that in the agreement, there was, with the 25 Research Road, it talked about shutting the turbine down when icing is detected, which no doubt would be the sensors, or forecast. What do you mean by that? How do we get the forecast? Are we looking at FAA forecasting, or are we looking at, the Cape Cod Times or the Falmouth Enterprise?
Well, first, let me say that I think that the applicant would be willing to agree to reasonable language on that if the board wants to make a condition about that, and we could come up with more precise forecast language. What I did not want to suggest in the agreement is that the kind of 10-day forecast that we can look at means that it's forecast and that we have to shut it down at that time, or necessarily that even on the 24-hour forecast that it says later in the day it's going to be, there'll be icy conditions. We may not need to shut it down when we read that forecast. Now, it's not when forecast, it's during the hour or the time that is forecast to happen. That's what I intended by the language put into the agreement. Keep in mind that we now have a legal agreement between the property owners about this. I also expect that there will be a condition about this, and that you'll draw from the language we've already agreed to about shutting the machine down under certain circumstances in there. There's a strong incentive for the applicant, for the operator of the turbine, to comply. And you're dealing, I might add, with somebody whose reputation would suggest to you that there will be compliance. Can we work with you to refine that language? I guess so, but I wanted you to understand what my intention was.
That's all I wanted to know. I didn't know what you were intending by forecast, so that answers it. In that agreement, you also have a legal obligation to government underwriters. Why not the town of Falmouth as well?
Which agreement are you talking about?
Still on the forecasting of the ice.
Well,
Scanlon will also be expressly obligated to government underwriters to shut down operation of the turbine when blade icing is detected or forecast.
That's a private agreement with government underwriting. I think it would be perfectly appropriate, as I've just said, to have such a condition in the Board of Appeals decision,
right,
which would do just what you're saying, in my opinion.
Okay. Next, you've spoken to the insurance carrier regarding naming the neighbor.
Yes, and we've submitted to you a letter from the insurance carrier that such damage due to the operations would be covered.
My question is more to, I think the question was asked by Mr. Erickson some hearings ago, as to the town being named in that insurance policy as well.
Well, we would have no objection to having the town named as a certificate holder if the insurer will do it. If you want to condition it on our ability to have that done, that's fine. What the insurer is really saying is we're insuring J.K. Scanlon Company and the property owner against these risks, and anybody who would sue the company for alleged damage will presumably be covered. It's the company, J.K. Scanlon, that's the covered company.
Yeah.
But you're saying that what the certificate holder, that is, in this case, government underwritten limited partnership, as being a certificate holder, they are entitled to a notice from the insurance company if there were to be a change in the insurance. I think that the Board of Appeals could require in its decision that there be insurance. We're going to maintain it anyway. I just don't know whether the insurance company will name the town of Falmouth as an insurer. If they will, sure, we'll give you a copy of that.
All right. one of the things you addressed, and you didn't bring it up this evening, but in your correspondence was the question that I think it was Colin Murphy had asked about having permanent sensors in place to measure sound.
Well, I did respond to that in correspondence. I gave the answer I received from Greg Inman is that they're not aware of such a system that can be installed. You know, we are agreeable to a sound complaint protocol, as you know. We're agreeable to that, but we think that it needs to apply to the residential properties if there are any complaints from residential properties.
The other one, Bob, I just need to have you comment on this because I read completely all of the accident data that you gave us. And this is the data that was put together by, I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly, Caithness Wind Farm Information. And there was a section under blade failure. And it's very brief, I'll read it to you. It says, by far the biggest number of incidents found was due to blade failure. In fact, it talks about 201 separate incidences. Then it goes on to say that pieces of blade are documented as traveling up to 1,300 meters. In Germany, blade pieces have gone through roofs and walls of nearby buildings. This is why CWIF believe that there should be a minimum distance of at least 2 kilometers, that's 1.25 miles roughly, between turbines and occupied housing in order to adequately address public safety and other issues, including noise and shadow flicker. That's about 6,500 feet. Now, you gave us this information, and I'm wondering, does that same information relate to this turbine? Or
Well, I don't-
how we should interpret it differently?
Well, first of all, I gave you information that doesn't make me an expert. It also doesn't tell us whether the turbine that they're talking about and the distances they're suggesting is for a 2-megawatt machine, which is almost 10 times what we're talking about, or machines which today rise 450 feet in the air, and so on. That was an accident report prepared by an organization which I believe is generally opposed to wind turbines, and so they compiled what they thought was the most comprehensive list of accidents that anybody has done. And they have made a suggestion which, as you know from your extensive study, far exceeds the distances that anybody would suggest are needed for, if not any machine, then certainly for the machine we're talking about, this 225 kilowatt machine on a 40-meter tower. And I'll point out that it was, I think we've said before, it had been recommended that it be a 50-meter tower, and the applicant simply wanted to reduce the impact of it, even at the loss of some of the energy, and so it's being erected on a 40-meter tower. Obviously, we can't install this machine if we would need a 1.25 mile distance to any other, to a residence. But that's a figure pulled out from a report, from a accident report that I've given you. But I would suggest to you that the work that you did, you and your board members, in studying what was an appropriate distance and what the Cape Cod Commission has come up with, that those are recent studies related to Cape Cod, and we far exceed the limited distances suggested from residences.
Thank you. Okay, what I'll do is, if there's any new information from anyone in the audience, we'll start with those who are opposed. Anything new? Okay, anyone in favor? Okay. I'll bring it back to the board. I think in a case like this, we will have a discussion first, see where it goes, so everyone can hear where we're going with this application. So, Mr. Atkins?
Yes, sir. I don't have a problem with this wind turbine. I think it's a very small turbine compared to the ones that we've seen recently. I think the big problem that we had was mitigated by the agreement that the attorney submitted in the last week. If the neighbor that's affected has no problem with it, and it goes over only his property, doesn't go over any public ways, I don't have a problem with that, with the quote-unquote fall zone. It's significantly smaller than the other turbines we've been talking about. I think that the work that we put on a potential new wind turbine regulations that haven't gone anywhere, where we said that the distance would be 10 times the overall height, and this is 13 times to the closest residence, which is upwind from the prevailing winds. Taking all that into consideration, I think this is an approvable project.
Okay, Ron.
I would concur with what Dennis says, and I think they've done the homework on it. Got answers, good answers to all the questions we decided.
Tricia?
I don't have any problem. I think the applicant has listened to our concerns. They're willing to be open for us to make conditions regarding the flicker with residents, the ice buildup. They're answering all of the questions we're asking. They're more than willing to understand that they're going to be conditions. They addressed the fall zone with the neighbor next door. Going on record at the registry, everybody's going to know about it, so it's protecting anybody in the future that looks at those properties. I think this is a viable project.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially with proper conditions and the agreement and the fact that it's in the LIB Tech Park. It's a special circumstance, really.
I think in many ways, the timing of this application came at an awkward time because we are so sensitive to so many things. But I would say that with conditions, this is also something that can be approved. It's unfortunate that so many other things have shadowed this application. But I think, given, and quite frankly, there are too many conditions, I think, to go over this evening. So what I would like to propose, given where the board's going, is that we take this application under advisement. We'd need to get an extension from the applicant and ask the zoning administrator to draft a positive decision on this. That we would come back in a public meeting. I can't tell you when precisely that would be, but we would certainly give notice in going through it. I think, I'm not going to list all of them, but we have a number of things in here, including sound. I think there was a 6 dBA differential that was agreed to. There's ice conditions. I think the agreement with the neighbor was a very valuable piece, and I appreciate your creativity to do that. I think looking at it expiring in 20 years unless renewed, I think we can look at some decommissioning things. The Cape Cod Commission has recommended a 120-day period if it is not operational for 120 consecutive days as triggering that. So rather than go through all of that, I know that certainly all of us have taken notes, and our zoning administrator has as well, that we can work this into, I think, a much more educated and sensible decision that takes into consideration everyone's concerns and needs. So, okay with an extension? Bob?
With that being said, Matt, if Attorney Ahmet gets the things to me and it is drafted, would you be amenable to putting it on the agenda for next week if it can be sent out to all the board members? Because I know there is a time criteria, number one, for this board, because we don't meet again until April 14th
14th.
because of precinct meetings and town meetings.
That's fine with...
I do have a question for the applicant.
Sure, go ahead, Curtis.
Bob, you mentioned something earlier about, I think it was Cape Cod Commission coming up with new regulatory standards. and-
Well, the Cape Cod Commission has already voted new regulations.
Can you just explain how a delayed vote here would affect this project?
The Cape Cod Commission has voted to recommend to the County Assembly of Delegates a set of regulations. We've been advised that unless a special permit has been voted, the scan the turbine will be subject to those regulations if they are adopted by the Assembly of Delegates before the Board of Appeals, I'm not sure whether it's votes or issues a special permit. So we have a concern, and frankly, I should have checked the date of the Assembly of Delegates meeting before coming here tonight, and I failed to do so. I think it's coming up very soon. I don't know if it's within the next week, but I think we're talking about in the next couple of weeks. And so the timing is really critical, or maybe really critical as we understand it. Now, unless the board were to spend the time tonight and just list some conditions and take a vote, subject to, maybe that would do it. If the board is willing to do that, well, great. Maybe you do that after you finish your other work tonight. And maybe we can't do that, and we have to do it next week. It's an important decision. I can understand that. But I think next week I would work with Sari to make sure that you have something you can vote on next week, and I hope that that works. I mean, the process otherwise is if the regulations apply, we have to go to the commission, seek a hardship exemption, because we can't meet, we don't have a clear fall zone in this area, in this situation. We have a fall zone with a driveway on it, and some of the regulations of the Cape Cod Commission would be very difficult to meet. Under the circumstances, they might very well grant a hardship exemption, but we really would like to avoid that very much. So we appreciate your support for this project, your willingness to vote, and I hope we have time to do it without our getting screwed up.
I'll just quickly weigh in on that. I could not possibly do it this
Yeah.
evening. There are too many conditions. In fact, one of the things, for example, asking you about whether or not the town could be an additional insured, I'd like you to get that answer for us so that whether or not we can work that in. This is, as much as there is support, there also has to be a great amount of detail to this decision.
I can't argue with your position on that, any bit.
So I think we can certainly compromise by, I know that the 10th is going to be a long evening, but we will face it.
I wasn't trying to
No.
bring up anything except for the fact that the board is going to be tied, and if you are going to take it under advisement and go beyond the 10th, then the next available meeting is April 14th, so he would have to give us an extension of no less than 35 days.
Right. Do you think we can do it by the 10th?
Oh, yes.
Sorry?
I think we'll do it because we have to. Sure, we can do it. We'll start working on it tomorrow.
To our administrator, though, because we also have a lot of decisions to...
I think, well, I really don't have any right now except this one, if you vote on it and whatever else you vote tonight. But I think I have a good general idea of what the board is looking for.
Okay.
Maybe some verbiage would help from you on the insurance, because I'm a little concerned about that one.
And all of us have kept some lists of things that we can send into you. But I think this is one of those that we come back, we'll do it at a public meeting.
Pretty much has been represented and discussed.
So do we need an extension from the applicant if we go to the 10th?
Yes, yes, we do.
So if you will make sure that Sri has that tomorrow morning?
It expires on the 9th, or 90 days, so...
Okay. And for those of you
Give us a few
who
days.
continue to be interested in this application, we will be discussing the draft motion that'll be brought to us next week, and we will act on it at that time. Todd, you can.
Thank you. Todd Rummy, Blacksmith Shop Road. Would it be acceptable if any of the neighbors wanted to offer any suggestions that, in terms of conditions, as things that we might be interested in?
It has to be based on findings and conditions by the board that have been represented herein in a discussion between the applicant and the board. All of the public comment has been made and nobody spoke tonight.
Yeah.
And the board and the applicant has pretty much discussed everything that they have come up with.
Right, so we'll take into consideration anything that's been brought to us up to this point, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the motion from the board would be to take it under advisement and to direct our zoning administrator to draft a positive motion.
And to get an extension from the applicant, please, if
And he
that
has
could be in
agreed
the
to bring that
record.
into us tomorrow, and I think it was Mr.
Ken.
Foreman and Mrs. Pavuli?
No, run.
Oh, and
Ken
Mr.
and Ron.
Erickson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous vote. Thank you all very much for your input on all sides of this. I appreciate it. Okay. Our next application is 2-11 for the Barnstable County Agricultural Society. Ask the clerk to read it into the record.
Wendy Brown, General Manager. Oh, sorry.
She's going to read it in.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to ask you to come up in just a moment, okay?
Sure you will. Application 2-11, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Barnstable County Agricultural Society of East Falmouth, Mass. applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 24038, 24109A, 24109B, 24160, 24018 of the Code of Falmouth to allow the holding of a non-agricultural events with associated parking on property located at 1220 Nathan Ellis Highway, East Falmouth, Mass. Publication dates February 8th and February 15th, 2011.
Now, Wendy Brown.
Sorry, Wendy Brown, Barnstable County Agricultural Society. I'm here applying for a special permit for non-fair events for 2011.
I'm sure we might have a few questions for Wendy.
Good.
Ken, do you want to start? Oh, I'm sorry.
There's no comment from Building Board of Health. Any event, whether agricultural in nature or not, that provides food or drink, free of charge or not, or provides an opportunity for vendors to provide food or drink, must be permitted by the Board of Health. Events that begin and end on a weekend must not be overlooked as a situation where a temporary food service permit may be necessary, but participants in such events may believe that no permits are necessary because the health department is closed. Events scheduled for weekends will require significant advance planning to obtain permits during regular business hours. Engineering, no comment. Natural resources, no comment. Planning, no comment. Water, no comment. And no comments.
Okay. Now, Ken.
No, I'm going to be like Clarence Thomas. I have no question.
You remind me so much of him, too. Tricia.
No fireworks, no symphony?
Exactly.
Okay.
Unfortunately for the symphony, everybody misses that,
Yeah,
but
we do. No, I don't think so. I'm all set on that.
The August 1st and the August 7th events, what's the parking area? Is area B for arena or for parking?
the horse show, August 1st? Yep. That's in the lower arena, and they park right on the grounds inside the gated area. They come in gate 6 off of Ashumet. It's not a big show. It's if they get 100 people, it's more of an internal thing for the riders.
Okay. And for August 13th, 14th?
That event, as of, I apologize, I was off for 4 weeks, and I'm just getting back, and it looks like that event probably will not take place. Right now, there is no contract. They did not make money last year, so I should know by the beginning of next week if it's even going to occur at all. If it does occur, it's all on the grounds proper. They park in Lot 4 off of Courier, and use the lower arena area.
And is that parking in Lot 4, if they do have an event, is that paid or not paid parking?
Non-paid.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Ron?
I'm all set.
Did you get the August 7th parking too?
Yeah.
Okay.
August 1st and 2nd.
And the 13th and 14th?
Yes.
Okay. And I have no other questions. Wendy, again, it's been a pleasure working with you to get all of these in place with Sri, and that effort's paid off tremendously. So, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to the county? Okay. Anyone in favor? All right. Have enough information? Motion to close?
So moved.
Mr. Murphy, Mr. Erickson, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. Okay, motion to approve?
I will make a motion to grant application 2-11 for the Barnstable County Agricultural Society.
Second.
Okay. The conditions would be, of course, events and parking as represented and just modified this evening as well. In addition, that licensing by trades prior to events, any event not represented herein that is non-agricultural or has paid parking needs to be brought to the Board of Appeals for administrative approval. Okay?
Any events that aren't on this
That are-
list
right, that
also,
are non-
that will come for administrative approval?
Right.
Yes, okay.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. Good luck, and thank you again for your cooperation. Okay. Okay, next we have application number 3-11, Thomas W. and Suzanne M. Cooney. And may surprise you all, but in the spirit of full disclosure that I always do, Mr. Eads' wife was the executive director of a nonprofit organization in Concord, Massachusetts that I represented nearly 5 years ago. With that, I'll ask you to read it into the
Full
record.
disclosure, I will also disclose in the day-to-day business of my office at the assessors in the Falmouth Town Hall, I have had people come to the counter requesting information on the history of this property, so I just want to know if anybody has any objections to me sitting on this hearing. No?
We need to hear from both applicants on
Yeah.
both of you, please,
Does the applicant have any?
for the record.
No objection. No objection.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And I'll read it into the record.
Thank you.
Application 3-11, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Thomas W. and Suzanne M. Cooney of Wayland, Mass. appealed the decision of the building commissioner to issue a building permit for a single-family dwelling on property located at 1 and 5 Quinnipoxet Ave, Falmouth, Mass. Publication dates February 8th and February 15th, 2011.
Mr. Eads, you're welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, absolutely.
Good evening. My name is Rich Eads. I'm an attorney here in Falmouth, and I'm representing Thomas and Suzanne Cooney, who are sitting over here. And they were the purchasers of 3 Quinnipoxet Road over in Falmouth Heights, and they did so on December 15th of last year. And just so everybody gets this right up front, they did know that there was at least a possibility that a house might be built on 1 Quinnipoxet. But to be fair, the building permit, the individuals who pulled the building permit for the house owned it as of December 11th, 2009, and nothing had happened for almost a year. The building permit was actually issued on December 13th, 2010, 2 days before the closing. Before I get too far into this, I'd like to just deal with a procedural matter. I assume the board has, I believe the board has in its records the letter that was submitted by the individuals who hold the building permit, in which a suggestion is made that there's a procedural defect in our application. And the reference is, of course, to Town Code Zoning Bylaw 240, Section 202, Appeals Procedure, and it's suggested, as near as I can understand, that because we didn't complain to the building inspector and he didn't reject our complaint, that we're not entitled to appeal. And certainly, under Section 1 of subsection A of 240-202, aggrieved by reason of his inability to obtain a permit or enforcement action, that would be true. Section 2 of that same section says any person aggrieved by any order or decision of the building commissioner in violation of any provisions of this chapter or general laws 40, chapter 40, section A. And that, of course, is what we did. The building inspector issued a building permit. That's a decision. We appealed it. So I would gently suggest that as we proceed through this tangled procedural, not procedural, factual pattern, that as regards other statements in that letter submitted, you keep in mind the procedural one that hopefully I've just resolved for you. What we're going to be talking about tonight is common ownership and merger, and it's one of those things that everybody sort of knows what it is, and I'm sure the members of the board are much more familiar with it than most. But briefly, it's been said that adjoining parcels may and possibly must be considered one lot for zoning purposes. That was held against the Zoning Board of Appeals of Greenfield. I won't give you the entire site. Preston against the Board of Appeals of Hull in 2001. Basic purpose of the zoning laws to foster the creation of conforming lots. And two lots separately owned at the time of zoning change that made them non-conforming merged when later purchased by one owner. If I might be so bold as to sort of take a look at what the individuals who pulled the building permit might be saying to you tonight based on the submissions that are given to you, they're going to say something like, you should look no further than Chapter 240, Section 66C, subsection 5, as it applies to 1 Quinnipoxet, which I'd tell you has also been called 297 Grand Avenue and also Lot 67. And they're going to say that it was separately owned on January 1, 1981, and therefore everything's taken care of. And they will also, I suspect, suggest to you that in Section 4, as it applies to 5 Quinnipoxet, which has been paired with 1 Quinnipoxet to make 1 Quinnipoxet buildable, they're going to suggest that where the language says the way I think of that particular section is, when is a lot commonly owned, not commonly owned? And the answer is when it has a dwelling on all the other commonly held lots. And that would be, I suggest, what we're going to hear about 5 Quinnipoxet. So why did my clients, the Coonies, take this appeal? Well, this is not something you've seen before. I got this tonight, so I apologize in advance. Mr. Roberts. This is the listing sheet that was made available when my clients were considering the purchase of 3 Quinnipoxet. And I'll direct your attention to the lower right-hand picture at the bottom. That was the view from the side of the house that faced towards the south. If you've perchance been by the property any time in the recent past, you'll know that that is no longer the view, but that's what it was when they made their offer and entered into an agreement and purchased the property. Now, in addition, why did they take this appeal? Well, because they're an abutter who's aggrieved by the decision of the building commissioner to issue this building permit. And we would suggest to you that because not everything in the factual history of these properties is quite as simple as what I anticipate the applicant's argument may be. So I'm going to show you a visual aid. I'm really excited about this because I don't usually use these things. This is like entering new technology for me. And just in case it's too far away, I have some more. And yes, there's a second page. But apparently, Staples only do it so big. If we don't breathe too hard, that should stay up there. So,
Excuse me. Go right ahead, Mr. Hughes.
my 25-year-old son apparently has a laser pointer and said I should take it with me, but that was beyond my technological abilities. These are the various properties that are involved here. 293 Grand is what I believe may be popularly known as the Contessa's house, big house on Grand Avenue. The one where the new house is going up was previously known as 297 Grand and then became known as 1 Quinnipoxet. 3 Quinnipoxet is just behind 1, and that's the property my clients purchased. 5 Quinnipoxet is behind 3, 7 is behind 5, 8 Walden is behind 293 Grand. So why are we talking about common ownership? Well, I can tell you briefly, anything that's in blue, we would suggest to you is commonly owned. And before you get too excited about this, it jumps from 89 to 2005, so there'd be a lot more blue, but you can only fit so much on the page. 293 Grand, Helen Herman transferred to Helen and Francois Herman, 1966. 3 Quinnipoxet, same deed, Helen Herman to Helen and Francois Herman. 5 Quinnipoxet, that deed may be from Helen, that may deed be into Helen Herman. And it may not be on this deed, but then I wasn't familiar with all the lots when I was doing the title. 7 Quinnipoxet, Francois Herman purchased in 1976. The rest, sorry. Should have used the laser pointer. The peach color represents when all the properties are sold in 2005. And they were sold after the death of Francois Herman in 2003. They're sold by the estate. This property here, 297 Grand, now known as 1 Quinnipoxet, was purchased by Charles Dodson as trustee of the FH Realty Trust in 1988. And since these properties were sold, they've been through a number of owners since then. It seems to be popular to get foreclosed. And here are the current applicants for the building permit, owning 1 and 5 in 2009. And here's my client purchasing 3 in 2010. Now, I have already submitted to you the sheets that the building commissioner uses when someone asks him for a letter of buildability, which are called the non-conforming worksheets. And if you look at those, it's interesting because the various lots are all as of 1981, and at least on a superficial look at it, it looks like they might be owned by different people. There's an E. Herman, there's a H. Herman, there's an H and F. Herman, there's a F. Herman, and there's the F.H. Realty Trust. Now, the thing about it is that E. Herman is Elena Herman, and Elena Herman is the same person as Helen Herman. And Helen Herman, or Elena Herman, is the stepmother of Francoise Herman, who is F. Herman. And we would suggest to you that the F.H. Realty Trust is in fact Francoise Herman. And that the trustee of that trust is one Charles Dodson, and you'll see that the grantor as executor for the estate of Francoise Herman is the same Charles Dodson. And that sort of suggestion that these are all separate owners and therefore they're not commonly owned follows through into the letter that was submitted to you by the applicants in January. Now, Helen Herman died in 1985. And anything that she was a joint owner of, and as joint owners they each own it, so they're joint owners, common owners, anything that she owned jointly with Francoise went to Francoise. And Francoise already owned 7. And the F.H. Realty Trust already owned 1 Quinnipoxet. Now, I'm suggesting to you that 1 Quinnipoxet and the F.H. Realty Trust was for the benefit of Francoise Herman. And the letter that was submitted to you by the applicants in January 19 suggests that there is no schedule of beneficiaries filed at the Registry of Deeds. That's right, there isn't. And there's no way to prove that F.H. Realty Trust stands for Francoise Herman Realty Trust, no matter how much logic suggests that that must be the case. But we do have a little more. When I looked at the estate for Francoise Herman, Barnstable Probate 03P0198 EP1. Would you mind sharing? That's the inventory that was filed in the estate. And you'll notice that the individual who did the inventory is the same Charles Dodson, who was trustee of the F.H. Realty Trust and executor of the will of Francoise Herman. And on the second page is the schedule of real estate. And I would point out to you the second item listed thereon, which is none other than 297 Grand Avenue, which is this one. So I suggest to you that it is more than reasonable to conclude that the F.H. Realty Trust, in fact, was for the benefit of Francoise Herman. Otherwise, why is it showing up in her estate? Now, I think we have to assume that Mr. Dodson actually may have known what he was doing when he did this, so there's no other conclusion that I can come to as to the actual ownership of the beneficiary of the F.H. Realty Trust. But even if we completely overlook the fact that common sense tells us these are all the same people, that it's commonly held, what would it mean if Francoise Herman and Helen and Francoise Herman and the F.H. Realty Trust were somehow all separate owners? Would that change what I'm suggesting to you? Well, there are Massachusetts cases on the point of merger and common ownership, and I've listed them in the letter that you have there, and if the board needs copies of them, I'd be happy to provide them. And I know you have competent counsel to advise you as to what these cases say, because lawyers can make a case say almost anything if they put their mind to it. But in Lee against the Board of Harwich, an appeals court case, said checkerboarding was transparently ineffective. It's a device whereby an owner conveys title to lots to related persons in such a manner that no adjoining lots are owned by the same person. The court observed it's highly doubtful that sham conveyances to related parties accomplish the desired effect. In Planning Board of Norwell against Serena, a 1989 appeals court case, a landowner will not be permitted to create a dimensional nonconformity if he could have used his adjoining land to avoid or diminish the nonconformity. The crux is not form of ownership, but control. Did the landowner have it within his power? A lot will not be considered separately held if the landowner has the power to sell, transfer, or dispose of the adjoining lot. Conveyance may establish separate ownership, but not separate dominion or control. So I'm suggesting to you that the issue of common ownership really comes down to, as the courts have said, dominion and control. So some other facts about these lots that are relevant to dominion and control. Why am I telling you that these are all commonly held, other than the fact that they all end up in Francois Herman? Well, as to 1 Quinnipoxet, it was purchased by the FH Realty Trust, of which the beneficiary we now know was Francois Herman, in 1988. What did she do with that property? Well, it had a big house on it. She took it down. Charles Dodson pulled the building permit, but the house came down in 1989. And since 1989, that property has been vacant until building started in December. I'd refer you to the case of Dial Away Company against the Zoning Board of Appeals of Auburn, which affirmed the denial of a building permit where the house had been torn down and the lot vacant for 23 years. So once the house was demolished by Francois Herman, or the FH Realty Trust, what was it used for? Well, I have some pictures for you. You'll be relieved to know I have no videos. That doesn't help, does it? Never mind. Here's the chair, you get the glossy one.
Thank you.
This is an aerial view of the property. You can see Casino Wharf there at the right-hand side. And basically the property is most of the buildings with red roofs. Now, I'll tell you that this aerial photograph was taken in 2008. We looked at other earlier aerial photographs, and I can represent to you that it is an accurate representation of the property as it existed for many years. So, coming up from Casino Wharf, moving to the left across the picture, the big building is the Contessa's house, 293 Grand. The area on the right-hand side from where we're looking at it, I can't point to it.
That's it.
That's 1 Quinnipoxet. You'll notice that it appears to have on it a paved area, appears to have some circular area down there, and it appears to be trying to grow grass. The house behind that is 3 Quinnipoxet. The one above 3 Quinnipoxet is 8 Walden. The one to the left of 3 Quinnipoxet with what appear to be cars parked there in a parking lot of some kind, a paved area, that's 5 Quinnipoxet. And then the area to the left of that, with 2 roofs on it, one red and one gray, is 7 quintupoxet. And I actually didn't learn this until just the other day. I just assumed that was a house and a garage. But it's not. In fact, it's 2 garages. So 7 was purchased by Francoise in her own name in 1976. And as a precursor of what she did on 1 quintupoxet, what was the first thing she did with a house that was there? Well, she tore it down. 1978, 2 years later, she tore the house down. Now, there was a building permit for, it's a little unclear, some of these records, as the letter you got from the applicants suggested, some of these records, you can say, well, the Board of Assessors must have been wrong, or the building department must have been wrong. I don't know, but there was a building permit. Either 1 garage stayed and 1 was built, or 2 garages were built. I'm not real, I can't promise you one or the other about that. Oh, I'm forgetting some things. If I could return us to 1 quintupoxet, I had talked about the photograph showing you the side yard, either the side yard or the front yard, side yard of 293 grand or the front yard of 3 quintupoxet, the patio, the parking space. Well, this one, I've only got 1. This is a picture of the cellar hole that the applicants dug. And what you'll notice is in that cellar hole a whole lot of electrical cabling on the side. And we're not talking about an extension cord. We're talking about electrical cabling that you can barely get your hands around. Well, what that was, apparently, is that there's a pretty good-sized generator that sits on a little concrete patio on the side of 3 quintupoxet that all that cabling hooks up to. And all that cabling goes to 293 grand, 8 Walden, and 12 Walden. And it apparently was emergency power, should the power company lose its power. So what we have is, after Francoise Herman, in the guise of the FH Realty Trust, acquired 1 quintupoxet, she tore the house down, landscaped it, and put electrical cabling that served all the other houses on the properties that she owned. And I do note that the letter that you had from the applicants as to the landscaping said that it was for safety and to improve the appearance of 3 quintupoxet and 293 grand. Sounds to me like they were making it into their side and front yard, but that's just my way of thinking, I'd have to confess. I would suggest to you that the actions taken by the FH Realty Trust, Francoise Herman, demonstrated dominion and control over 1 quintupoxet for the benefit of the other properties that she owned. Now returning to 5 and 7 quintupoxet, we've already established she tore down 7 quintupoxet. It had a house on it. And she put 2 garages there. Now, if you'll note, the building permit for the 2 garages was in October of '81. Now, if we charitably assume that it was only a building permit for 1 garage, so that somehow there was a garage still there, I would call to your attention that 240-66C, paren subparagraph 4, says, Any lot held in common ownership with such adjoining lots vacant as of 1 January 1981 may be treated as not held in common ownership. And this is what's being used for 5 Quinnipiaxet, this section. If, as of January 1, 1981, a dwelling was in existence on all the other commonly held contiguous lots. Well, not so much. I'm prepared to concede that there might have been a garage on 7 Quinnipiaxet, but there sure weren't 2 of them. There was only one, and one thing that there certainly wasn't on 7 Quinnipiaxet was a dwelling. And a garage isn't a dwelling. So I'd suggest to you that the application of subsection 4 here is inappropriate. Because if these lots are commonly held, and I'm suggesting to you that they are, that we have to look at the reality here, at the control and dominion, not the fact that, oh, it was Elena here, Helen here, and Francoise here, but that in fact it was all the Herman family, and particularly Francoise, that those were all commonly held, and at least on 7 Quinnipiaxet, there wasn't a dwelling on January 1, 1981. And if there wasn't a dwelling, it doesn't fit under subsection 4. Because in order for 5 to be vacant and not commonly held, even though it really is commonly held, you have to have a dwelling on all the others. So it doesn't work. And idle curiosity, why are there 2 garages on 7 Quinnipiaxet? Well, I don't know really. Charles Dodson might have known, but he died. But who puts 2 garages on one piece of property? Well, I direct your attention to the photograph, the aerial photograph I've given to you, I think you're going to find there aren't a lot of garages around there on those properties. There aren't a lot of parking spaces either. So my theory, just mine, you're free to believe it or not, is that the reason there are 2 garages on that property is because that's where the cars parked for 3 Quinnipiaxet, 293 Grand, 8 Walden, 12 Walden. Either that or staff were using them, storage. They were being used for the benefit of the other houses. So the benefit to 7 Quinnipiaxet from having 2 garages on it doesn't exist unless you link it to something else. And I would also point out to you that if you look at 7 Quinnipiaxet carefully, what you're going to see is there's a fence around it. And it runs all the way along the street and all the way along the back, and there is no access from 7 Quinnipiaxet to the street. In fact, the access is over 5 Quinnipiaxet. Now, 5 Quinnipiaxet has to be vacant as of January 1, 1981, in order to qualify under 240 Section 66 sub C. Well, the Board of Assessors records...
C what?
C4.
Okay, thank you.
Beg your pardon? The Board of Assessors records say there's been an outbuilding on 5 Quinnipiaxet from 1981 and earlier to 2008. And it's been suggested that, that was a mistake, that they've been assessing this property for having an outbuilding on it for all those years. Well, I don't know, it could be a mistake. So why would somebody who owned a piece of property that's being assessed for something that's not there not complain about that? Why would they not care? Well, it could be because they owned the lot that the building really was on, which would have been 7 Quinnipiaxet. And therefore, it made no difference to them where they paid the taxes or where it was assessed, because they were going to have to pay it anyway. And lastly, the Board of Health records show that 5 Quinnipiaxet has a cesspool on it. Well, it's never had a building. Maybe it had a piece of a garage. It's never had a building. It's had some parking area. Why does it have a cesspool on it? I mean, can't use it unless it's connected to something. There was no house on 7 Quinnipoxet after Francois tore it down. We can only speculate. The Board of Health seems to think it came from either 8 or 12 Walden to serve them. And a permit was actually pulled to remove it on July 15 of 2010, but it hasn't been removed yet, so it's still there to the best of my knowledge. So I would suggest to you that what we have here from 1976, which is when 7 Quinnipoxet joins the happy group of commonly held houses, or 1966, that 293 grand, 1 Quinnipoxet, also known as 297 grand, 3 Quinn, 5 Quinn, sorry, I'm abbreviating. I've been reading these too long. It's hard to say Quinnipoxet that many times. Were all commonly held, and that 1, 5, and 7 Quinnipoxet all existed for the benefit of the other lots that actually had houses on them. I know people have done the Woods Hole, the Falmouth road race, and they put up barriers across the whole front, so that includes 1 Quinnipoxet and 293 grand. Now, this board has in previous decisions dealt with these kinds of issues before. And what the board has done in a couple of cases is talk about accessory use, which I'd suggest is another way of looking at merger or common ownership. And I would direct you to your decisions in, wildly guessing here, Checo and Kirkado in 2006. And I believe I've referenced those in the letter I gave you last week, in which this board upheld denials of building permits, finding that 2 lots adjoining commonly held that the use of one for a storage shed, patio, part of a driveway, another one had a septic system on it that served the other house, that these were all accessory uses that in fact tied it to the lot with a house on it, and therefore the other lot could not be a building lot in its own right. I'm suggesting to you that that's one way of looking at it. Another is that the situation here is one in which possibly 1 Quinnipoxet certainly was held separately in 1981. If that's the only thing you're going to look at, okay. But I would suggest to you that the laws seem to suggest that things can change over time, that it was subsequently acquired by Francoise Herman, that she tore the house down, she used it as a side yard, she ran electricity across it for the benefit of all our other houses, and that falls absolutely within what the courts have held constitutes dominion and control so as to merge the lots. And if it was merged, then it can't be a building lot. And even if it could be, even if you decide that it was owned by Eileen Aldrich in 1981, and God bless her, that's the way it's going to stay, it still needs to be paired with another lot. And I'm suggesting to you that 5 Quinnipoxet shouldn't work, because it has to be vacant as of January 1, 1981, and gosh and by golly, probably had parking on it at that point, had a cesspool, it's been used as access to 7 Quinnipoxet for this entire time. 7 Quinnipoxet doesn't qualify. It didn't have a dwelling on it on January 1, 1981. So there's nothing to pair it with. So, what I'm asking you is that you find that there was common ownership, or if you prefer, it was being used as an accessory use, that there was non-compliance with Chapter 240-66C, subsections 4 and 5, because 1, 5, and 7 were treated as accessories for the benefit of the other lots owned by Francoise Herman that actually had residences on them, that 1 and 5 Quinnipoxet ought not be entitled to the protection of the zoning bylaw, since they were really being used for other purposes, and we would request the board to find the decision of the building inspector to issue this building permit was erroneous and not based on all the facts that arguably he may well not have had before him at the time. So we thank you for your consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
What we're going to do, Mr. Eads, have the clerk read referrals, update us on any correspondence, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Stand, sit.
You can be comfortable, please.
Engineering, this project was reviewed by engineering for driveway permit, see attached, which is there. Board of Health, all state and local regulations for subsurface sewage disposal system installation must be observed. No comment from natural resources, no comment from planning, no comment from water, and there's a letter from Janice and David Annenberg. They're unable to attend the hearing, and they are in support of the appeal by the Coonies. And that is it from butters, and there's a whole bunch of information from Mr. McKenzie, and I'm sure he'll review that. There's also a letter from Joe Taylor. He owns Unit P and Q of 2 Quinnipoxet, and he's in agreement with the Coonies the board should overturn. I do believe that's it. Everything else is going to be reviewed, I'm sure, by the letter writer.
Okay. Well, Mr. Eads, why don't we start with some questions? Ron, do you have any?
I'm going to come back in a minute.
Okay, Dennis?
No.
Tricia?
No, I'm going to hold my questions until everything is presented.
Ken?
I guess I'm wondering if there's any, so you cited some decisions by the courts that argue that control essentially creates common ownership. Are there decisions that go the other way?
Well, I have to admit, I wasn't looking for those. I mean, I'm sure, objectively, yeah, there are probably decisions, but they'd be based on factual issues, and if in fact the court believed that there was not a sufficient amount of dominion and control, it wouldn't surprise me to find that there was something that would have gone the other way. In this case, I believe that there's no question that these lots were adjuncts. They were parking areas. They were places where you put your garages, where you paved to park, this kind of thing, where you put a cesspool, where you run electricity to serve the benefit of all the other houses. I think
So that's what might distinguish this case from others?
Yes.
In your view? Okay.
I do have one question I just want to clarify with Sari. The 2 cases that you referenced that this board denied the applications, those were overturned by the courts, that we were incorrect.
No.
No?
That's not true.
That's what I want to clarify.
No. The one, you're thinking of other ones, there was 5 at about the same period of time. SECO never appealed our decision. You're thinking of 2 others. If you want me to name them, I certainly can.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
But no.
But they were similar facts.
They were
and
similar
the-
Very similar facts.
And the court did overturn this
SECO is
decision.
exactly like
Yes.
one of them that was appealed and overturned
Right.
by the court.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis?
Yes. So thank you for the very thorough presentation.
I appreciate that.
So on January 1st, 1981, 1 Quinnipoxet was not owned by anyone named Runner.
No, it was owned by Eileen Aldrich.
Great.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in your presentation you were making the point that 5 Quinnipoxet had something on the dwelling, on the lot in that 1/1/1981.
No,
I don't see the lot.
No, I was not. 5 has always been ostensibly vacant.
Great.
I've been suggesting vacant is a term that's subject to interpretation, and I'm suggesting that there were lots of things going on 5 Quinnipoxet that made it not so vacant as one might like to believe.
That clarified my question. Thank you.
Mr. Eads, I've got several questions. If you start with the properness of the appeal. You made a comment about that, and I just want to clarify that. Are you saying that you filed the appeal within 30 days of the issuance of the building permit?
Yes.
The building permit was December 13, 2010, and the appeal was filed January 6?
That was when it was filed. No, granted.
It's in the file.
Right. But you're saying it was the issuance of the building permit that you appealed, and you did that within the 30 days,
That
subject
was
to
my understanding I had.
24202B.
Right.
Okay, not a trick question, I just want to clarify that and get that off.
Question, I just thought.
I just want to get that off the table so we don't worry about that.
My understanding was I'd filed within 30 days.
Mr. Reed did file within 30 days.
I
How gracious.
believe so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Next, Mr. Eads, you spent a lot of time on 240-66C4, and I'm not sure why, because the building commissioner made his decision on section C5.
My understanding that it was paired with 5 quintupoxet to make it happen.
It is paired with 5 quintupoxet, but he based it on the section of the code that is 240-66C5, not C4.
Correct.
I was wondering why you provided us so much information on subsection C4.
Fair enough, yes. In order for a lot to be paired under subsection C5, it has to be another undersized vacant lot.
Right. And I think you just said that 5, to Mr. Murphy's question, 5 was a vacant lot.
I said that it's been represented that it was a vacant lot, but we don't believe that it was. That we believe that it had things going on, like a cesspool and parking, and that it was being used and controlled in such a way that, in fact, it had already merged with at least 7, if not all the other lots. So that, and 7 didn't have a dwelling on it.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you're confusing me to some degree, and I apologize for my limitations. I'm trying to get back to why 4 when the building commissioner used 5.
Yes, I'll take another stab at it.
Is it possible to go through 5 and come to a determination? And if it doesn't work in 5, you look elsewhere? The only reason I say that is 5 seems to have a couple of very clear elements. Not held in common ownership, we could try to determine, and that's as of 1981, January 1981, no other date. So when I look at the blue or purple, I'm looking at 1981 up there, and I'm seeing different ownership. I know you're talking about dominion and control, but on your own graph, it's showing different ownership.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't lie to you about it.
No, no.
What I'm suggesting to you is that sub 5, C5,
Right.
says that any lot not held in common ownership with any land as of 1 January 1981, and I've conceded that 1 Quinnipiac was in different ownership as of January 1, 1981.
Right.
But subsection 5 says that it may be eligible to apply for a building permit without the benefit of a special permit if the petitioner acquires another undersized vacant lot within the subdivision or immediate neighborhood.
Right.
And that the vacant lot that was acquired in order to make this happen is 5 Quinnipiac. That's my understanding of what happened.
Right.
So that's why I'm talking about subsection 4, because...
No, before you get on to 4, because I need to be comfortable with 5, because that's what the building commissioner did. So, just as you said, acquired another undersized vacant lot. And contrary to perhaps what is written by another party here, I interpret that to be vacant at the time that it was acquired. So when was Lot 5 acquired? Or 5 Quinnipiac, I'm sorry.
5 Quinnipiac was acquired in 1966.
No, by the party who's looking to use it for the credit.
2009.
Okay. And so my question on 5 is, was it vacant? Don't give us a suggestion. Tell us yes or no in your view, and why. Was it vacant or not? And Answer that question first, okay?
I don't think it was vacant,
You don't think it was vacant, for what reason?
because it had a cesspool on it, it had a parking lot on it,
Okay.
and it was being used as access for 7 Quinnipiac.
Based on that opinion, then, why don't you just stop at 5 and say the building commissioner should be overturned?
Fair enough, if that's what you'd like to do.
It's not what I'd like to do. I'm just trying to be very clear and to be very honest with you as we go in and out of Section C4, it gets very confusing. And I'm looking at the building commissioner making his decision based on C5. If he did that erroneously, we can agree with the application. If he didn't, we can't agree with the application. He didn't use C4. Am I missing something?
Well, in terms of just using C5.
Right. That's all the building commissioner used.
Right. Well, it isn't clear to me that you're using it as of another undersized vacant lot as of the date that they bought it. I mean, it has to be vacant at the date they bought it, but it also has to be vacant prior to that time, I'd suggest.
Actually, I don't want to debate with you, so I won't. I just wanted to ask why you went into 4, but I get a sense of that, so. Any other questions, Suri? Okay.
I could perhaps take a stab at trying to elaborate on that. I have no particular desire to mess up everybody's chains of title here, but if indeed all these properties were commonly held at the time Francois Herman died, then an argument could be made that none of them were entitled to non-conforming status, certainly the ones that didn't have houses on them. And even that did have a house, of course, retains its identity. And parenthetically, I would note that $297 grand, if Francois Herman hadn't torn that house down a year after she bought it in 1989 and the house were still there, that would be a legal building lot, legal non-conforming pre-existing building lot. And if you wanted to build a house, you could tear it down, but you would need a special permit to do it. So, in point of fact, when these properties were listed for sale, it was listed as one property.
In 2005.
2005, those properties were all initially listed as one property.
Okay, Mr. East, why don't we give the other side an opportunity to speak, and then we can ask some questions and move on. Steve, are you representing?
There's several of us here.
Okay. Who should I recognize?
Well, I'll start if that's okay.
All right, Mr. McKenzie.
Chairman, for the record, my name is Stephen McKenzie. I represent Falmouth and I'm working with Attorney Robert Fredericks, who's sitting here in the white shirt. We represent FW Nominee Trust. I'm just trying to put some of my stuff back together after Attorney Eads' things I pulled apart during his discussion. I think I want to make one statement before I start my presentation, and I think as I go through that statement might be helpful, which is that I think Attorney Eads' entire argument is based upon Chapter 48, Section 6. It doesn't track local bylaw. The local bylaws in towns are allowed to provide extra protections, which is exactly what Falmouth has done. And all of the things that we work off of 1181. That is the operative date here today. It's not what happened from 1994 to 2006. It's 1181. And I think the board is pretty cognizant of that, and I want to try to go through a few things to offset some of the things that were said. So let me try to start from the beginning again. As I say, I represent David Wald and William Fendick, who are the trustees of the FW Nominee Trust. They're represented by Bob Fredericks, their attorney. Also with us tonight is Stephen Tessier, who was the attorney who requested and obtained several different letters of buildability from Mr. Gore for different properties up there. They were done for a prior owner, and if the board has any questions of him as to why those letters were requested and issued, he's here to answer those questions for us. David Wald and Bill Fender are also here, as is David's wife, Diane. I want to give you a little background of my clients and the purchase so you understand them a little better and understand that they didn't just casually walk into this. They acquired lots 1 and 5 by deed dated December 7th, 2009. Both Dave and Bill are very experienced builders and developers, and either as partners together or separately, they've developed properties in Falmouth for over 30 years. These include single-family homes, subdivisions, condominium developments, commercial properties, the like. They're very wise, educated, and prudent property owners, and they don't casually purchase property where there might be something complicated like this without being properly assured that they're buying something they can build on, especially when we have hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake. In this particular case, they reviewed the letters of buildability that were issued by Eladio, and then they retained attorney Laura Moynihan. As this board knows, Laura's a very experienced local zoning attorney. She's very familiar with this section of the bylaw. Laura represented them. She's represented several clients before this board, and she also reviewed the letters of buildability, the zoning history, and the title history of the property. She then prepared the covenant that was specified under 240-66C5, and the covenant was approved and signed by Eladio as the building commissioner. It was also signed by Bob Rittenauer as the town manager. Prior to Bob signing it, he sent a memo to Frank Duffy, town council, asking for his comment on it. And prior to him signing, town council stated in a written reply to Mr. Rittenauer, quote, "The covenant complies with section 240-66C5 of the zoning bylaw and is approved as to form." Following that, when these issues came up, I got involved because the attorney who represents the buyer for the home that's being built asked me to take a look at this to make sure that everything was done properly. So that's how I first got involved in it. Then, when the appeal came in, Dave and Bill hired Bob and myself to look at this. So in addition to Laura Moynihan looking at it, Attorney Fredericks has looked at it, Attorney Betsonides has looked at it, I've looked at it, town council's looked at it, Mr. Gore's looked at it. There's been a lot of eyes that have looked at this, and now Mr. Eads has looked at it, and now you folks get a chance to look at it. So as I say, they've had a lot of people looking at this to make sure they didn't spend an awful lot of money to buy a piece of property they weren't going to be able to build on. I want to go through the background of the protection of non-conforming lots. There's a couple of wrong dates in our code, but what happened was the previous section on the bylaws from 1979, which is the one they sort of refer to in our code, this small paragraph right here, section 3420, is all that was in the code that dealt with non-conforming lots. There was nothing else in the zoning code at that time. The reason why we have the 1181 date is because in 1982, the planning board, recognizing that there were issues with non-conforming lots in town, spent a lot of time and created they drafted Article 56 for the April 1982 town meeting, where they asked town meeting to eliminate the previous section and completely rewrite the new section. The new section that's there now is almost identical in 2011 as it was in 1982. And I want to read portions of the planning board's rationale for drafting and promoting this article. It says, "The planning board submitted an official report of its recommendation to the meeting, and said report was read by the members assembled. The recommendation was for adoption of Article 56 for the following reason. This article will provide instant automatic protection to approximately 70 to 80% of the 3,400 undersized lots in town." It also went on to say, the next section, section 3421, provides an extra buffer of safety for singly owned lots in addition to the state protection. And that's where I think Attorney Zeid's argument fails. It's focused more on 48.6, where Falmouth specifically crafted this bylaw to provide extra protections within the town beyond 48.6. Section 3425, which is almost identical to what we have right now for 240-66C5, it said, the planning board said that section 3425 will allow certain landowners to upgrade their lot without having to go to the Board of Appeals. In 1979, unless you had the 3 or 5 year exemption under 48.6, it said no building permit could be issued for any lot without a special permit. And what the planning board did was they were trying to provide instant protection for this number of lots, as I say, 70 to 80% of the lots in the town. It was also going to give them better guidelines to evaluate the remaining 20 to 30%. So the planning board really recognized that this was an issue and crafted this bylaw for this protection. That's why we've always gone with 1/181, because it went from the year before this date came in. That's why we always look at that book. That's why all of our bylaws and worksheets work off of that date. 1/181 is an extremely important date in the town of Falmouth with respect to zoning. As I say, Mr. Eads speaks a lot about Section 244, 240, 66C4 and C5. I've got a couple maps I wanted to show you and explain a few things and why there might have been some discrepancies. This is the, and I'm going to make it easier for all of us in a minute. This is the original subdivision plan for the Falmouth Heights subdivision. You look at the dates, January 1st, 1871. As I understand it, this was the first planned community in the United States. And these lots that are colored in this particular fashion go along with the titles that we did on these properties to show. The yellow would be 1 Quinnipiac. The purple would be 3, which was bought by Mr. and Mrs. Cooney. 5 would be 5 Quinnipiac. 7 and 9 is 7 Quinnipiac. This is the Contessa's house, and this is 8 Walden. What happened is, what's really interesting is, as I say, January 1st, 1871, 5 months later, they came back and they made a revision to the plan. What you'll see it's circled here, let me go back to this one more time, is you'll see on this side, we have lots 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And over here, this is now the Terrace Gables, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 6 months later, they moved this road closer to the beach. And they added in lots 6, 11, 12, and 6. They also made some changes to the park. So they created 4 more lots from January to June. And I think that that's what's created some of the issues for the assessors. There was some discussion about why didn't they complain when they got tax bills, once at a garage, once at vacant. Well, the Hermans not only owned a good chunk of this property in different, and they probably owned it under trust in different names, but they didn't own them just here. They owned them in Milan, they owned them in Paris, they owned them in New York. When Francoise Herman died, her estate was worth almost $300 million. She had at auction still to this date, the largest single jewelry sale that was ever done anywhere around the world. One of the reasons it might have been the cars, the garages, she also had $3 million worth of cars all over the place. The woman loved cars, and she was a great lady. I had the pleasure of working with her on the appeal of the casino before she passed away. Unfortunately, she passed away in the middle of the suit. Then we had, 2 years later, we had one more final revision, which again left these same lots, but the revisions were mostly around Central Park and the addition of additional lots out on this side. Since we're all getting old and I didn't used to wear these glasses when I got here, I thought this might be a little easy to follow. Yeah. This is the blow-up of the assessors maps. It shows the same thing as what these showed, same color coordination, but this is to show, again, the important date, 1/181, who owned each of these properties and what the status was of each of these properties. So if we look, and that's when we get to the different sections, C5, C4, or C3. Our protections are in C1 through C6. Eileen Aldrich owned this property by deed dated 7/24/44. The house was demolished in 1989 after it was purchased. It wasn't demolished on a whim. It's up in hurricane damage. It had to come down. That was the only reason it did come down. This lot here was owned by Francoise Herman and Helen Herman, who was her stepmother, as joint tenants. This had a dwelling on it on January 1, 1981. This lot was owned by Elena Herman, and Attorney Eads is right, Helen Herman and Elena Herman are the same person. So, but I put on exactly what was on the deed. So this is, Elena Herman owned this one individually, and it was vacant, and it has always been vacant. This one was owned by Helen and her stepdaughter as joint tenants, and it had a dwelling on it. This one was also owned by Helen and Francoise jointly. It had a dwelling on it. So this lot couldn't merge with either one of these. If you followed, if they were connected, C4 would say that there was a dwelling on all these other lots as a 1/181, so this one would retain its protection under C4. But we didn't go into C4. Helen Herman and Francoise also on this one, this had a dwelling and a garage. Elena Herman owned this one individually, it also had a dwelling and a garage. The only connection between the two that were owned by Elena is this point. So these aren't contiguous lots, they only touch here. This one was owned by the Doucettes, this was owned by Richard and Rita Walsh also had a dwelling. This was owned by Bessie Cardoza. I didn't put them on here because there was never a question about merger. They also had a house on it. So when we go into the merger issues, those merger issues that Attorney talks about are under 40A6. They're not under our local bylaw. Our local bylaw provided these protections. The planning board really saw this urgent need to do this and spent a lot of time to recreate and draft this new bylaw to provide this exactly the kind of protection we're looking for here. It hasn't changed in 29 years. It's always been available to everyone. It just doesn't get used that often. I think you probably see more of it as there's less and less land out there and people are trying to build houses on smaller lots. So as I said, that's one of the most important things I can hammer home today is that the 1/181 is the date. And I know that there were some cases that were referred to. Attorney Fredericks is here to answer any questions on any cases, but I do want to point out a case of Rourke v. Rothman, which is a Supreme Judicial Court case that was decided on January 11, 2007, and I'll be happy to submit a copy of this. And what it refers to, it talks about the underlying policy of Section 6. And it says Section 6 under 40A is concerned with protecting a once valid lot from being rendered unbuildable for residential purposes, assuming the lot meets modest minimum area and frontage requirements. This statutory policy of keeping once buildable lots buildable, grounded in principles of fairness to landowners, applies regardless whether the local change rendering a property unbuildable is characterized as a repeal or an exemption or a grandfather clause. And it says, consistent with this policy, and we're talking about the highest court in Massachusetts, we have construed various provisions of Section 6 broadly to protect landowners' expectations being able to build once valid lots. And it goes on further to say, because you always hear about the other competing policy, which is to eliminate nonconformities. And it says the plaintiffs, which was the other side, contend that the competing policy favoring elimination of nonconformities demands a narrow interpretation of requirements if you meet the current requirements. It says while elimination of nonconformity may be a general goal of zoning, it is certainly not the goal of the first section of Section 6, fourth paragraph, the manifest purpose of which is to preserve the buildable status of certain nonconforming lots in perpetuity. I think that this case speaks more to what we're talking about here today, and we have to look at the local bylaw, and some of those other cases didn't have the local bylaw. I know the Norwell case, that referred to creating a new lot. We're not creating a new lot. These lots have been here. So I won't go through C4 and C5. I think the board pretty well understands that because, but Mr. Chairman, you asked a very poignant question, which is, when was the date acquired? If you read C5, it talks about the petitioner. If the petitioner acquires, the petitioner is the one who's asking for relief to be able to build under C5. So it's the petitioner, which the petitioner in this case was FW Nominee Trust, who acquired the property in 2009. Doesn't make any difference what was on there before. It had to be vacant at that time. There was a lot of discussion about the cesspool and about some electrical lines, so let me at least try to address that. I think a lot of the argument fails anyway because this town looks at 1/181. What's it separate? And as you say, 1/181, this couldn't merge with anything because it was owned in this Aldrich name. But with respect to the cesspool, there was a cesspool at the back of Lot 8, which served both this lot and there was another one, I guess, over here. It appears at the end, and it was unknown, that there was a cesspool, and if you went out and looked at the property, these things were never staged before. And what happened is I ended up getting a special permit under C3 to build the house here, because this one fit under C3. It's under the old plan, it would have been 7,500 square feet, which means it would have been protected under C2, also would have been protected under C1. But when it was surveyed, it came out at 7357. But it did allow us under C3 then to get a permit. Most of these lots are smaller. By deed, this lot is 125 feet by 50, which would be 6,250 square feet. But when you survey it out, it's 5,950, which is why 2,000 square feet of 5 has been credited under that covenant to here to get us over required 7,500 square feet. Most of these lots aren't as deep as people thought they were on either side. The cesspool that they're talking about was an overflow cesspool that was not used, which appears to have been right on the line. I went out and looked at it, where the stakes are and the flags, and the overdig from the hole is 9 feet over on Lot 8 and 9 feet over on this side. So it is like right on the line. It was probably, I'm going to guess, unsurveyed lot was supposed to be on the back of this guy's property, to be close to this one so that the two of them could work together. With respect to those electrical lines and the generator, I do not know when the generator went in, but I would have to assume that it went in prior to the FH Realty Trust acquiring the property in 1988. And the reason for that is the lines run like this. If you were going to take this house down, which again, they didn't just willy-nilly take it down, it had hurricane damage. There'd be no reason, if this is here, to not run it like this across the property if you didn't intend to use this. They purposely took it under a trust. I do not know whether Francois Herman was the beneficiary of the trust or not. As it says, as he indicated, the trust document itself says that the schedule of beneficiaries is on file in Charles Dodson's office out in Worcester. And it's typical, you don't normally disclose one of the declarations of a nominee trust is done, who the beneficiary is. But it stayed that way always, and it came out that way. When it was deeded out to one of the holding companies that bought several of these properties, it was deeded out from the trustee of the trust, not as trustee under the will. Or it didn't come out of the will at all. The deed makes no mention whatsoever of Francois Herman's estate. The listing that was done for all of these, the Hermans, let's say at the time of death, her death owned or controlled all of these properties. She also owned all this property over here. These are also in different trusts. As you may recall, Bill Fender and his partner, with my help, we built the Vineyard View condominiums over here. We also then abandoned Manchester Ave here, we built another house here, and now there's another home over here. This was also owned by the Hermans. The listing that was done was a listing of all the property that was coming out of Herman estate or Herman control. And I think, quite frankly, it was poorly listed because most people in town thought the price was for just this house. It wasn't until the very end that we learned that it was for all the pieces of property. And I would have to say, I haven't seen, I wasn't given a copy of the listing that was shown to Mr. and Mrs. Cooney. I would have to say that the listing is meaningless if it had the view. The broker made a mistake. If the brokers advertised it that lot couldn't be built, shame on them. Unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Cooney bought the property. But it didn't come as a surprise that something was going to be there. As they said right up front, they did say that they were aware of the possibility something was going to go there. There was a sign that said "Build to Suit, Falmouth Building Company," for a year. It was up there before their successor entitled bought the property. So it had been there for over a year. If somebody wanted to look, you could have looked, you could have gone to the registry and seen when this, in August of 2010 is when the covenant went on. Nobody contacted anybody else that had any questions. It wasn't until Mr. and Mrs. Cooney acquired the property and then did the appeal. We still say that procedurally it is defective because 240-202B, let's see, make sure I got this right. 242A2 says that any person, including an officer of the Board of Falmouth or any abutting city or town, agree by an order or decision, the building commissioner can appeal to you. There was no order. The building permit isn't an order or decision. The decision that you'd be aggrieved by, you're not aggrieved by the issuance of a building permit. You aggrieve when you ask him to rescind it, and then he doesn't do what you want. That's when the being aggrieved comes. You're not aggrieved that he issued the permit. So I still say, although we're not really raising that so much as an objection today, procedurally, I'd say it's still defective. Not entitled to come here directly.
Just a quick question on that. Practically speaking, if the board found that, all they do is go back and ask the building commissioner to issue?
Exactly.
And we'd be back here?
And we'd be back here. Same thing with, that was going to be my next follow-up, right, you pointed me there. Same thing, the covenant says under C5, the petitioner has to acquire another vacant lot. If this board found because of that cesspool that was, the overflow cesspool that was right on the back, that this was vacant, we have other lots available to acquire right now. We could go acquire another vacant lot, re-record the covenant, and we'd be back in the same spot. So if the issue is that this isn't a vacant lot, there are other vacant lots out there. We've already identified a few of them and talked with the owners of those. So in essence, without going through some of the other things that were brought up, it's our contention that David and Bill properly followed the procedures under C5. Attorney Moynihan did an excellent job in representing them, and that they're entitled to have you uphold Mr. Gore's decision. Okay. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'm sure we'll have some. Ken, do you want to start?
Actually, I don't. I thought that was pretty clear.
Good. Tricia?
I have no questions.
I was too.
I probably will.
I knew.
Only because I want to make sure that I got it clear from everyone. 1981, who owned 1 Quinnapoxet, who owned 5 Quinnapoxet?
In 1981, Eileen Aldrich owned 1 Quinnapoxet, and it was improved by a dwelling. Elena Herman owned 5 Quinnapoxet individually, and it was vacant.
Okay. And the parties that filed the covenant acquired both properties on 12/7/2009?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, was either of the lots vacant?
At the time, both of the lots were vacant. This house had been raised in 1989.
Right.
One thing I did forget, this one wasn't just, again, taken down and put up a garage. This was ordered to be demolished by the building department in 1978, and the assessors records would reflect that. Which then left 1 garage, and then a second garage went up. And if it helps to see that, I have the building permits, but I also have...
Actually, you submitted a lot of that in your
I
file.
submitted the
You did.
aerial photos
Yes.
Yes, you did.
from 1975 and 1986 that show the house and the garage, and then the 2 garages.
All right, given the intensity of both presentations, give Mr. Eads an opportunity to comment. I'll give you a final comment, and we'll see if anyone else has any interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would note that, at least insofar as the minutes of the town meeting that put all this into effect, that the explanation is this article gives greater protection to owners of undersized lots by expanding the definition of lots to be considered not held in common ownership, eliminating an inequity for owners of undersized lots who had already been through the special permit process. I'm not aware that either of these have been through any special permit process. And yes, I would freely concede that local bylaws can change what you can do under 40A Section 6. Absolutely. No question about it. If that house had stayed there, it's a buildable lot. If it was vacant, it's a buildable lot. I'm not going to argue that point. Okay? My point is, it was none of the above. Can we ignore what really happened here, which is that vacant lot was merged and became common with 297 Grand, and 5 was merged and became common with others, because that's the way they were used. The owner exercised complete, utter, absolute dominion and control over those lots. She used them for her purposes. She used them for the benefit of the other lots that she owned. Now, you can ignore that and say, 1181, we don't care. Okay, but I'm guessing when these changes were made that it was to preserve the non-buildable lots for people who were counting on that for their retirement and that kind of thing. I'm not thinking that it was so a builder could come up and get an ocean view lot and put up a $1 million house on it and make a lot of money off it. That's just my guess. Let's see. I love local knowledge, you know. The ability to say, I was there, and therefore I know. Okay. If you were there and it happened, and maybe you're part and parcel of it, I guess I'd say the same thing, that you ought to make the decision because I told you that.
We can synthesize through that.
I don't know that. I'm suggesting to you that if in fact you believe, and I'm hoping that what we've given you is clear enough, that these properties were non-conforming. No problem there. But even if they were non-conforming as of 1/181, well, if there's a house on it, no problem there. If it's vacant, no problem there. But if in fact you use it you use it for another purpose. You use it for the benefit of the other lots you own if you exercise dominion and control, and the cases are clear on this, admittedly for 40A Section 6. But it wouldn't be the first time that something has overlapped into local zoning as well. If you believe that these lots got merged, then they lost their protection as of 1/181 because they're not the same lots that they were then. They aren't. So, any questions?
Let me see if there are any questions.
Sorry.
Folks?
I'm good.
Any questions, Mr. Reed? I just have one. And I apologize again. Are you suggesting that we should not look at 1/181?
No, you can look at 1/181. Absolutely, you should look at 1/181.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting, and I can't do any more than suggest, that you should also look at what's happened to it since 1/181. Because in the two decisions I mentioned, what the board looked at was actions that occurred after two lots, one of which was vacant, and work was done on one of the other lots, and the board found that it lost its protection.
Okay. Then one final question on 1/181, 1 Quinnipiac. Was that controlled by any of the other folks? Never mind the ownership, was it controlled by any of the other parties?
I'm sorry, which other parties are we talking about?
The ones that you're talking about,
There's only-
the Fs and the Hs and the trusts and all of the rest of it.
No.
You're saying dominion and control. So in 1981, 1 Quinnipiac was not under dominion and control by anyone else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I can't dispute that point. It was not. And what I'm urging you to do is to look a little beyond that
Right.
as to whether it continued that way.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Steve?
I'll be very quick. I'm not sure if Attorney Fredericks wants to say anything. Just to respond real quickly, Attorney Eads is right. See, the language talked about having to go through for the special permit process. As I pointed out in 1979, the only way you could get a building permit on an undersized lot was to come to the ZBA. That's why they made the changes to do things like this. And special provisions allow you to not have to come to the ZBA. No offense, but there's nothing wrong with making money. If it's okay if these guys make money, I have no problem with that.
That's what we feel.
And as Attorney Eads had just said, admittedly, those cases that it refers to were for under 40A Section 6. And again, here it's our local bylaw, which grants protections above and beyond that's specified in 40A Section 6. In the two ZBA cases, I probably won't go into them too much, but they're different than what's here.
We take each case separately, you know that. Steve, is there anyone else that you want to have make a presentation?
Yeah. Attorney Fredericks?
Very good.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I will just offer up...
Just name for the record on television,
Robert
okay?
Fredericks representing the...
Do it back there so the TV folks get it, okay?
And my name is Robert Fredericks,
Thank you.
representing Mr. Wald and Mr. Fender. There's not much I want to say after what I think has been an excellent presentation, very thorough by both sides here. The note that I've left you is a two-pager. I think it tries to focus, as I would suggest you, as the building inspector did, and as I think it is and should be the focus of this inquiry is, what does C5 say? Did we hit the numbers? And that's simply what I've done there, or tried to do, with the materials that Steve has ably pointed out, and Mr. Eads has also provided for us. And so I thank you for your time.
All right, anyone else? Remember, for the audience and for the board, this is one of those reverse situations. If we approve the application, it's overturning the building commissioner's decision. If we deny the application, it is upholding the building commissioner's. So is there anyone here that's opposed to the application? That would mean anyone who wants to see the building commissioner's decision upheld. Anyone like to comment on that? If there's anything new, okay?
For the record, my name is Steve Tessier. I was the attorney that represented the previous owner.
and I met with Commissioner Moore on at least 2 or 3 occasions, and we went over this very thoroughly. And I would like to see then the building permit upheld, because we did not go over this lightly. I mean, we went through it very thoroughly. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Tessie.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
You're in favor of upholding the building commissioner's decision?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
for upholding. I'm Dave Wald, one of the builders,
Okay.
partners with Relief Fender. We won many awards in this town. We take everything very seriously. When this was filed, the appeal was filed, we were worried. We hired more people to do more research. Everything came out clear. The final question I had, personally, was answered yesterday in the town hall. Somebody wanted to define structure. Was there a structure on 5, a septic, cable? And it was the health inspector who said, wait a minute. If it's a structure, you have to get a building permit for it. You don't need a building permit for a septic or a cesspool. It's not considered a structure. It's not above ground. And the definition of the bylaws for the town, the structure is on the ground. So once I heard that, I was relieved, and everything else I was relieved about all along. So I just wanted to
You didn't want to
bring
wait for
out
us to get relieved.
what a structure was, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to see the building commissioner's decision overturned? Anyone in the audience? Okay. Board have enough information?
I do.
Motion to close?
Unless you want to discuss it
I just
first.
want one clarification, which is, the lot lines have not been reconfigured since the original subdivision. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, 67 has been.
I thought you showed that they were.
Try to answer it real quickly. The lot lines have not been reconfigured, but the deeds that went out after 1871 would say, like, this lot in a portion of lot 1. This one was lot 3 in a portion of lot 3. There were no other
But they
plans put on.
existed as independent parcels.
Was independent parcels. The only time that a new plan went on was as part of the surveying to figure out exactly how much land was in here and how much we needed to credit. This was surveyed and then became lot 67A. Other than that, there have been no changes to that subdivision.
If I may? You'll find in the material, you'll find in the letter that... You'll find in the letter that I submitted you the numbers of the plans, and we can certainly get them to you, which show these individual lots. This became 67A, as has been pointed out, by splitting back in the past, what used to be lot 1, and this used to be lot 67. So that became 67A. One lot shows on 2 plans, and lot 5 goes all the way back to the plans that Steve referred to, the original subdivision. And I'd just like to make one last point, and that is that I was concerned about the procedural aspect, and that's been brought up by the chairman and mentioned by Steve. However, we urge that you take this up on the merits as well, and that the decision can be made alternative, such that I don't think anybody wants us to come back again, which if the procedure, in some sense, for not going to the building inspector first is determined to be okay under the circumstances, we would certainly like a decision on the merits of the appeal that you have before you as well. And so if, as I'm sure you realize, it goes up on appeal, and an appellate court looks at it, for any reason, they find that you've done it the right way, even and had before you the right information to make the right decision, even if you made it based upon the wrong decision for some reason, it can be upheld.
Well, the only party that would object to our moving forward with this on the merit is you folks. And you've indicated that that's not of interest. But of course, if you wind up appealing that, you'll put in every reason that you need to. So I think this board will probably move forward on the merits unless I hear something differently, okay? All right. I think we've had enough information. Why don't we close this hearing and then have a discussion?
So moved.
Okay. Motion to close?
Second.
Mrs. Favuli, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Favuli. All in favor of closing this hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous vote. Okay, wishes of the board. To approve the application is to overturn the building commissioner. To deny the application is to uphold the building commissioner.
The burden of proof is on the applicant, and I don't think the burden of proof was met. What I was looking for was information of a dwelling on 5 Quinnipiac on December 7th, 2009, the date it was acquired, and I didn't get that information. I think we asked for it a couple of times. To me, the building commissioner did not err in his decision to issue a building permit here.
Trish?
I would have to agree. If it was vacant then, when they purchased it, it was a vacant lot. There was a vacant lot when they purchased it, it was a vacant lot.
Okay. Ken?
Well, I also think that the fact that the lot 1, I guess it is, 297, wasn't in fact in separate ownership in 81. That's sort of the deal.
I meant to lead with that, yes, thank you for
That's the
pointing it
deal
out.
breaker for me. The one case where I was sympathetic to not having building permits issued was when there was a reconfiguration of all the lots, but these lots haven't been reconfigured. This is protected.
Ron?
I'm with the group on that.
And I agree, and I think it comes down to 1981. There was no common ownership. The acquisition in 12/7/2009, in my view, was vacant. I don't believe the septic, or if there was any cable, rises to the level of making it not a vacant lot. And according to, and I believe that only Section 240-66C5 applies, and in that the third component of that was that a covenant was filed, and with that I would agree, and I would suggest that a motion to deny the application.
I'll make a motion to deny application 3-11 for Thomas W. and Susan Cooney.
Mrs. Favuli, Mr. Murphy, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous vote. Thank you all for your efforts, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that closes our official hearings this evening, and we do have another item of business, and just to approve minutes.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2011, Falmouth Youth Hockey, Hayden Enterprises, and administrative approval policy.
Before that one is seconded, I think, is that the one I have notes on in the corner?
Dennis is on notes for Falmouth Youth Hockey.
I do. That was the
Question on
Falmouth
notes.
Youth Hockey one. I was reading the notes. I remembered making comments at that, making questions, I think it was of Attorney Moynihan, about the coin-operated...
Vending machine, the slot machine thing?
Games,
Yeah, you did.
And I did that very specifically because that was a line in one of the bylaws that we were
mentioned that,
considering.
yeah.
And I didn't see those referenced in the notes, so I don't think
Then why don't we hold off on that? You get the language to Sari if you would, and we'll bring that back on the agenda.
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There was comments that I clearly remember
Right,
making
what
for very
hearing date? I
specific.
didn't hear because we were...
Oh, it's February 10th, Falmouth Youth Hockey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to approve all of the others except for Falmouth Youth Hockey?
I'm fine with that.
No,
Could
you...
we just table them, please?
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on to the next date. It's easier that way.
Okay. Approve the minutes of February 3rd, 2011, and that was Johnson, Falmouth Property LLC, Bridges, Aspen Holding, and Seacoast Shores Association. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then this one here is to approve the minutes of public hearing February 17th, and that's the Anderson appeal.
And of course, Trish and I recused
Right.
ourselves, so...
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's it. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
See you next week.
Next week it'll be.
Zoning administrator confirmation.
Tabled until next week.
Why did we do that?
Is that why you came tonight? Because I'm getting paid to sit here.
Well, I'm glad you're getting paid, because, everybody in the audience was getting paid. We're not, though.
I know, you guys are,
I know.
you got to be more comfortable seats, though. This is killing me.
That's when I always go to the
Yeah, they
back.
had those clipper cushions.
The clipper cushions.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I do that for the town meeting all the time.
I think next time meeting, I'm going to do a story about all the gifts we're closed. Tony, turn them off.
That'd be clever.
Tony's not in there, so hopefully the gentleman
Quite a few
is.
town meetings ago,
heard that we're
those
closed.
cushions were distributed.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that was an official thing?
Oh, they gave those away, did they?
Yeah.
No kidding. Oh, that was nice. Maybe we should imagine you should do it again for the new
I
folks.
still have one somewhere.
Trish, can you grab that recorder?
Are you counting them?
Thank you.
I had to dig through all sorts of minutes and a variety of things. And I don't think there's a need for the selectmen to have to take any action. I think we have to, but I gotta wait till Frank comes back to have that conversation.
His letter was pretty...
But he didn't do the research that I did. So I've got some things to chat about. I think we will have to do something here. It's because there's a whole... Thanks, Melanie.
Melanie, thank you.